Hello, everybody. Thank you for returning to our YouTube channel. I am Brian. This is Matthew, my co-host, former Navy SEAL with Technology United for Ukraine. So if you'd like to join us and help bring innovative technologies to the Ukrainian military and civilian population, join us. Links in the description. We look for anybody. You don't have to be an engineer or scientist. Anybody who can help out Ukraine, please join. All right, so let's get right into this. This is the update on Kursk and what's happening there. So what I'm going to do is share the screen with you guys. Here we go. All right, now we're going to go into look at some of the stuff what's going on. So let's go right into live maps. So this will give us a perspective, Matthew, on what's actually happening. Let me zoom in here. So this is where we are being told Ukraine has progressed. So this area here. And I believe there are reports they may well be further out. We also know they're down here in the Belgrade area. And let me give you a little perspective of what that looks like. Look how close they are to the rear of the Kharkiv offensive that the Russians were conducting. So Matthew, what are you seeing? What's your thoughts on what's happening? Do you think the Ukrainians now really have an intent to occupy a large area of Russia? Do you think they're going to pull up? But what's your sense now with everything that you're hearing?
I mean, it looks like they're flooding additional units. I mean, this is all speculation, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. Looks like they're pushing more units in to take advantage where they can. They were able to, as you can see some of the videos where they're able to ambush that large convoy of, I don't know what it was, like 20 different trucks.
This one here, I'll pull
more.
that up for you. And just so people have perspective, I do believe one of them was out here in this area here. Was it a large ambush? And then somewhere in here, there's this other video. I think that's where this picture we're going to show. It was a video. Let's just look here. This is the one that's more in the eastern, going in the eastern direction. There was a massive convoy, and apparently all these were taken out. Let me blow this up a little bigger here. So you can see that they were hitting them with, I think, HIMARS. What do you think, Matthew? You think that's HIMARS?
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but my guess, it may have been an ambush. Who knows? I don't have enough context even to know what it is.
And the Ukrainians aren't telling us, so.
Yeah.
And then here's the other one. This was more to the left flank of where the Ukrainians are going in. This was another ambush. And this, I actually saw the video for this. I can't play it only because there was a lot of deceased Russians in it. But I counted, and there was still more to apparently count, at least 18 vehicles that had been taken out. And that was, again, like right around this area here. So I'll go ahead, keep talking. I just wanted to kind of give everybody perspective about what you meant about those convoy ambushes.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, there's, you get all sorts of rumors flying around. And,
yes.
Looks like I mean, the best thing that the Ukrainians can do is continue pushing as far as they can. Like, I don't know what kind of losses they're taking to air defense or to the Russians' air. That would be the most likely way to cause significant casualties to the invading force. Like to push out their own maneuver forces, it just doesn't look like the Russians have any kind of reserves that are competent with that right now, and it'll probably still take them another couple days to go dig those groups up because they're likely all occupied down to the south and the eastern offenses. So if they do pull them out of there, it's still waiting for the Ukrainians as it kind of slows down the push. On the
and here's a little map here, Matthew, of where the Russians are pulling troops from. I guess this is from Ukrainian intelligence. This is where they're pulling forces out of.
Right. So I mean, if that is the case, then that's the response. It's still a victory to slow down those offensives everywhere else and thin out the lines for other attacks. But that ability to maneuver in the backfield's a huge advantage right now, and it's just not what the Russian military's very good at. Look, any military is going to struggle with significant forces in the backfield, and that's where the attackers have the advantage. If you don't have established choke points for the defender to uh, to basically make a stupid defense where you can put green guys and just say shoot that one direction. That means you have to get your forces. If the enemy attacks on a different point, you have to get your forces together and move to that new location. Move in such a way that you don't get ambushed, and move in such a way that you bring significant cohesive force to the fight. Um, and if you don't accomplish all those, then you're probably going to get cut up. My speculation is that's what the Russians are struggling with right now. So likely the Russians are establishing defensive points at their major intersections to keep any far-ranging attacks isolated. And then as they establish that, they'll put together kind of a reaction mobile force that can push in and start engaging the Ukrainian units and start to drive them back and limit their ability to move.
So I heard that this incursion here by the Ukrainians is looking, now this is again just speculation, is going to this intersection here, and they want to cut this off so that way they're cutting the supplies from the Belgorod region from getting up here. That's what I heard. That's just from stuff that was put out on Reddit.
I think that makes sense. It would be a twofold operation where the guys up north are going to try to sweep down. It would make sense. You would want to sweep down from the backside, and while that takes resources and attention away from the border regions, then you launch your own offensives in those border regions. If you can tie up the artillery, then offensive actions on those borders becomes much, much more likely to succeed. That is generally what breaks the back of the offense is heavy artillery and shelling at the points of attack. So if the Ukrainians can push in there, then it makes a big difference.
And do you think, Matthew, if they're going in this way, that I mean, I don't know how far in this direction they'll go, but let's do it this way here. If we go, so if I go like this, do you think this could eventually, if they keep pushing, this could look like something like this? Do you think they might take all of this and just basically cut all these routes off coming in from this way and occupy this land? Do you think that's a feasibility?
Well, yeah, look, it's a possibility. And this, a lot of this is, again, there's a lot of potentials here, but it's not clear.
How many troops do you think they need, Matthew? How many troops do you think they need to occupy? Do you think something like 30,000 or 20?
Yeah, I think that's at least the number you need to do any kind of real occupation.
Okay.
So like 2,000 is nothing. That'll easily get overwhelmed and cut off and surrounded. And since it's not friendly territory, it's hard to say how much resistance. It doesn't appear to be much Russian resistance in those areas, just them retreating. So but the supply lines have become significantly more of an issue without being in completely friendly territory. Those smaller numbers, good for raiding, but you're not going to hold a lot of ground with that. You'll need reinforcements and backup. I mean, the likelihood is that as the more experienced assault groups move forward, you just pile in your territorial guard behind them to hold ground and create that kind of secure supply lines. You want to basically be able to defend your supply routes to your next objective. It's kind of classic blitzkrieg tactics. Like once you punch a hole, your filler forces come in and create blocking lines to continue the assault. So there's I don't know if you have in your map there that there's a significant railway station that I believe there would be an obvious objective for them.
That's a good question. I don't see that on here. I know that there is. Now, I might be wrong. Somebody could make in the comments. I think there is a major rail that comes down this way, something like this. I might be wrong, and one that may come in this way too, into the Belgrade. Um, but yeah, I think this is where the main railroad routes. I mean, we could go. You want me to search it?
Oh, I don't know if it's, it's really worth it, but um,
I can actually show too if you want the Blitzkrieg. We have that on here. Let me just open something up. So what you were talking about, I actually have a short showing how a Blitzkrieg tactic works. So it's interesting you said that. I made a short of it. So we'll just pull that up here. And we go in here. And I have it down here. Right here. So this is showing the spearhead of the Blitzkrieg. And then the units protecting the logistics.
yeah, yeah, this is like a classic, a classic image right there. Um,
So yeah, that's interesting. You had brought that up. So I thought I would show that because it gives a great example of what you're talking about. Now let's see if Deep State has anything on the maps here that where it shows the railroads. I don't see that on Deep State. No, not anywhere on here. They don't have it. But one thing Deep State hasn't put up here, which is interesting, is this incursion into this area here. By the Ukrainians, and from what I understand, they were asked not to give any updates by the Ukrainian government. That's why you don't see
mm,
this here really, over showing anything really significant yet. Because I think they're just trying to keep OpSec as because I think they're more of this. It's starting to look more like something like this as the
mm,
Ukrainians push forward. And there's all kinds of obviously reports of where they are and actually how far they've gone in this area too. So it's yeah, there's a lot of the fog of war going on.
right.
Let me just in this there was also an airfield out here that they absolutely decimated. It was in Lipsy, something like that airfield. It was out here somewhere. I think this might be it here. This doesn't really update. Let's see. Yeah, this is the airfield out here that the
Um,
Ukrainians absolutely devastated a couple days ago. Tremendous explosions.
yeah, yeah, and that's
You also said something really interesting, Matthew. I want to share with everybody. Let me take this out a little bit so people get an idea. Um, maybe the live map might be better for this one here. You had said because they're stating that the Ukrainians have been massively shelling the rear of the Kharkiv Russian incursion. So here are the troops out here, but they've been massively shelling here. And you said that's to weaken their artillery and with a possible, strike from the rear. This way they have no real answer for something hitting from behind. So the Ukrainians could theoretically come from two directions.
yeah, that would definitely be the ideal. One of the things to also point out is, you know, depending on Ukrainian coordination, whether you want to launch your long range effects, like your different long range drones at their airfields, um, at the right time, so that any kind of close air support from the Russians has to come from airfields even further afield. So you cut down, uh, you cut the time, or you increase their time of attack by sometimes four times. If you can basically put pressure on the local airfields where it's not safe for them to fly from, and air support being like one of the major ways they could quickly strike back and cause damage to your mobile forces. So I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes part of the tactic as well.
And something that you and I were talking about earlier was how much the Russian troops that are there have absolutely collapsed, have crumbled, and even the reinforcements they're bringing in are so very inexperienced because they're bringing them either they were already here on the front lines, and the Russians didn't expect probably the West to
Yeah.
allow Ukraine to use as much Western equipment on Russian soil, so they didn't expect this attack. And I just like to show this is all over Reddit, the amount of Russians surrendering. And this is just a video of Russians surrendering to Ukrainian troops. And if you go on Reddit, you'll just find endless amounts of them surrendering in mass. What
Yeah.
are
So
your
like one of
thoughts
the
on that?
just to point out to the comment I made earlier to add on to that is that if you start to launch attacks against enemy airfields, especially if you track back the direction they flew from, then it
Yes.
adds a very large burden to their anti-air defenses to determine what's friendly and what's enemy. Um, and it's been more than once the Russians have shot down their own stuff. So if they
And
don't
that's
shoot
been
down your
common, right?
drones, great, because then you get a strike stuff. And if they do shoot down your stuff, then there's a good chance they're going to shoot down their stuff as well. So
And that's already been happening in this area. So you're right on. There's been a lot of friendly fire issues with the Russians because they're panicked and they seem to be shooting at anything in the sky.
yeah, and the benefit is if you use drones, they're cheap, and all their fighter jets are quite a bit more
Yeah.
expensive and quite a bit harder to replace. So um, yeah. So sorry, what was your previous question?
Oh, just what do you so seeing these troops just collapse, Russian troops, what's your kind of thoughts on what's happening? Do you think they're just the command there is pretty bad along with the troops being
Yeah,
inexperienced
it's
and
it's
unwilling
it's
to
it's,
want to
it's
fight?
likely it's that one, they're inexperienced, and two, they don't have a clear objective, um, and like a clear understanding of what the place looks like. I mean, the inexperienced adds head like that. So when an attacking force shows up, and they don't even know, or they get ambushed, they haven't really gone through any drills about what you do in an ambush. Should you drive through it? Should you got like what kind of defensive posture do you take? What kind of media actions do you take? They just don't have any of that stuff. So if you ever catch them unaware, then you can cause inordinate amounts of damage. Whereas, this is a philosophy of fighting. And you being in the boxing game, you might know this. Like, I might have many less skills than the opponent, but if I can strategize my way uh, to keep it into a single style of fighting that favors my type of fighting, then I don't
Hmm.
need those other skills. And that's what's happened with a lot of warfare. You might have really green guys, but if you throw them in a trench in multiple levels and you pile up a bunch of landmines, like I don't need SEAL Team 6 there at the trench line.
Right.
I just need a body. Um, and same, it goes the opposite way too. If I can restrict the type of battle it is to this like constrained World War One trench fighting, like SEAL Team 6 isn't going to do very good either. So like they're not going to do necessarily much better assaulting through a minefield and drones and artillery fire than any other unit that would do the same thing. You just need the bodies and the willingness to go forward. Not to say they wouldn't do better; they would do a little bit better, but they wouldn't necessarily do multiple times better, just because of this constraint of the fight. So the Ukrainians being able to push into this and maneuver and kind of exploit maneuver warfare will get them a lot larger gains. And it appears to be that they're trying to take full advantage of this by pushing in more and more troops and basically force the Russians' hand, which it appears that they are. The Russians are pulling reserves from their other parts of the battle line.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
No, you're right.
well,
There's a
yeah,
lot of reports that there's been heavy amounts of Russian reinforcements just flooding right through the middle here. Now, again, it's probably to help get the logistics set up, protect the gains they have. As these other troops push forward, you got to have that rear guard that's protecting what's already been captured. And you don't know what troops have been hiding that could now hit your rear, which happened to the Germans in World War II as they pushed so fast their blitzkrieg into Russia that they didn't take care of the rear units that they didn't finish off. And those units came together and then smash the rear of the Germans.
Right, right, and that's why Ukraine needs the people to fill in. So, to some degree, I think what I feel like I'm repeating myself at this point.
Yeah,
You'll see the Ukrainians push as far afield as they can and keep their
yeah,
supply lines intact and cause as much damage as possible. And once the Russians are able to plug their lines, um, they'll slowly constrict and start to take back ground. And then, once you lose your ability to maneuver and the Russians kind of solidify the defensive lines, it's just kind of, that then it's a question of how fast you can. Hopefully, they're already starting defensive works to retain some of the land that they've gained and be able to, make the Russians pay a high price. And the beauty is to get the Russians to blow up their own houses instead of Ukrainian ones. So, I mean, it's
yeah.
all looking good.
Yeah, and it looks well planned. And just to give perspective, everybody's kind of saying that it looks like they may be on their way to. Now we don't know how far they are. I've heard multiple reports. They are 40 kilometers. I've heard 80. So the Kursk, the city of Kursk, is roughly about 101 kilometers from where the Ukrainians started this offensive. There are reports they may well be out here. Let me just get rid of this here. This city over here, Real Rylisk, I think that's how do you say it. So they came in here, the Ukrainians, and they may well now be, let me give a measurement of this, out here, or at least somewhere in that's 46 kilometers out. And
Right. And
in this
so this
direction,
is like another point to make here is that, if the Allies are helping them with intelligence, this is where it can make a huge difference. Because if that satellite imagery and other intelligence comes in at high enough fidelity, you can track Russian buildup, and they can tell the Ukrainians when and where those systems are, then you can intelligently move around and strike where I doubt the Russians have as good as um, that kind of overall intelligence. Now, being their country, they might have enough informants, but
right?
what it looks like is they just lack the rapid kind of passing of that information.
They don't have
So,
reactionary force that's set up to handle this, right?
right, that's like, the general staff and the Russians might know there's a Ukrainian force moving, but are they able to call up and actually communicate effectively with the Russian forces in that area? And I think that's, when it comes to the green, uh, newly conscripted forces, the answer is probably no. And experienced units is probably yes, but that's why they need to surge those experienced units are all down south, so they have to surge them back up north. So that's
Now, let
probably
me
the
ask you a
process you're seeing right
question.
now.
With your background as a Navy SEAL and special operations, do you think there, and given that there's very little defensive positions, like Ukrainians are just rushing to, do you think they've got special operations going on behind lines here, setting up ambushes? Do you think they've gone significantly
Yes,
in
I
there?
do. I think they probably have they've got to have it to some degree.
Yeah,
If they don't, it's kind of ridiculous that they wouldn't. Like the second you make that opening in the lines, that's the perfect time for the special forces to surge through and cause all sorts of havoc. A lot of it's just ambushes on main, like because the enemy has to move its troops around, and if you set up your ambushes, your IEDs, your claymores, even FPV teams that are just out in a village, it's like a sniper team. We'd send sniper teams out, and you go look for the IED guys that place IEDs or whatever their mission might be. Um, it takes a little bit for the enemy forces to locate and then do something about it. But some drone teams probably even more effective. You send a drone team out and it just hangs out in a field in the middle of a country, and they strike important systems that the Russians are trying to move around. It slows down everything. And they don't know if you have 10 drones or 30 drones or 50 drones. So once a few drones strike a column, like it's probably going to be a real pain in the ass to go find that drone team. And you have to break off, how many guys to go search a whole village? Um, a lot.
and
And
they
are
may
they going to
be,
be
and
able
it
to
might be an
communicate and
ambush. They
maneuver?
have to take that right
Yeah,
into
right.
consideration. Like they may be
Yeah,
waiting for them.
Exactly. So you can, with a rather small group of guys, and with drones even more so, you can cause a well, much larger amount of offensive action than maybe you could even in the past. So yeah, I mean, we hope they have as much of this stuff out there causing damage as possible, and it seems like they've been doing a pretty good job, which is a big deal for the morale, I think, of the Ukrainians. And this could, like, it's kind of a double-edged sword, and that it benefits recruitment from both sides. The Russians, in the long term, may get more recruitment and additional personnel and inducted into their military because depending on how the Russians play this game. But I guarantee this is significant. Will make recruiting people to the Ukrainians side significantly better because what they've been struggling with is past mistakes from the leadership in Ukraine of incorrectly using their guys and getting them killed for little gain or zero gain because they're just complete stupid moves. And that's filtered back to the villages. And that's a big reason why you don't get as much recruitment and enthusiasm. It's not that they're necessarily afraid, it's that nobody wants to die for nothing. Like, there's plenty of people that are brave enough to go die if they know their death meant something. But no one wants to go die, and it literally made no difference. So if the Ukrainians are showing that what they're doing, and then they can trust their commanders and their leadership to put them to good use, and if they go to fight, they will make a difference. Then the morale of the country will significantly improve. And so, yeah, I think as long as they don't get caught in some kind of route and overextend and get cut off, um, then this will have been a pretty large success.
Yeah, and it looks like they're there to stay, huh? In your instinct, would you say this is not just an incursion where they're going to go in and come out? They're going
Yeah, I
in.
think they're gonna. I think they're gonna. The only question is like how much land they're gonna try to hold. In my opinion,
Right,
they're not gonna give
right.
that up without a fight because, like,
Yeah.
why would you? It's gonna buy you a lot of time. It's gonna force them to push a bunch of artillery because that's really the only effective way to, without losing a lot of guys. And Russia, as we still know, is still an artillery army. Whether you count drones as artillery or not, they're kind of synonymous in some sense. They're going to have to move a lot of that equipment to retake that land. And that whole time, setting up IEDs and ambushes and basically you just make them pay. And giving up a little bit of that ground you took for a lot of Russian dead and destroyed equipment is well worth the offensive action. So you might as well start reinforcing the defensive areas. And it's not necessarily you're going to hold it at all costs. It's like the perfect kind of ground you can give up to make the enemy pay as much as possible for that ground. But you're not, it's not your homeland. It's like, okay, if we take a step back, it's fine because we make them bleed 10-1 or whatever the stats might be.
All right. Well, Matthew, appreciate your perspective. This is very interesting what's going on. And this was a little long, but it gives everybody a good perspective on what's happening, what could happen, and what the future will look like there. Again, we're Technology United for Ukraine. If you'd like to join us, we look for anybody who wants to help bring innovative technologies to Ukrainian military and civilian and Slavo Ukrainian. Thanks again for coming.